Hello and welcome to Yahoo Finance Breakouts. I'm Emily McCormick, and today we're joined by Imran Khan, the co-founder and CEO of e-commerce platform Verishop. Imran, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
So this is great timing. Verishop is about to turn 1 year old next week, and looking back over the past couple of months especially, what does Verishop look like as a company now versus where it began and where it was before the COVID-19 outbreak?
Yeah, I think Verishop, we wanted to build a personalized shopping mall for you. And from very beginning, that is our goal, because we think e-commerce in the US is becoming so boring, right? It is all utility driven. You go, you buy things, and you leave, and it's all search based. But shopping's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be discovering new brand and new product, and it should also be convenient. And what we're trying to do is bringing discovery and entertainment and bring that together with convenience. So over the last 12 months, we continue to focus on bringing new brand and new product that you wouldn't find anywhere else. In addition to the brands that you love, so brought a lot of discovery on the platform. We also invested heavily on convenience. Our net promoter score is now 77, which is really doing really well. And we're going to continue to think, how can we bring more joy and entertainment to the platform? That's what we're now focused on.
And just taking a look at the sales trends that you've seen most recently, I know Verishop did release a sales trends report for between February and March and really highlighted that rotation you saw towards categories like home goods and beauty with social distancing going on. What were the trends that you saw after that and more recently in April, May, and now in June?
Yeah, I think we are seeing that things are going back to the normal level, as normal as can get. We are living through a very interesting time and very challenging time in many different ways. But I think we're seeing more normalizing level. But our home and beauty category still continues to do pretty well and doing better than they did pre-COVID. But business is becoming much more balanced now.
Do you have a sense in terms of, quantifying the actual percent changes that you've seen versus pre-COVID levels, maybe year over year, month over month, to just quantify those changes you've seen in sales trends?
Yeah, look, I think we saw in April our business grew 30% month over month, compared to March. In May, our business grew 33% month over month. We don't have a year-over-year data yet. Our June 18th will be our 1 year anniversary, but month over month we saw 30% plus growth rate both May and April.
And just looking at the brands that you've been working with over the past several months, and as you've accelerated growth on the platform, what's been the strategy in order to bring more brands here, as opposed to maybe going somewhere else like an Amazon or other places that they could choose to sell their products and have that channel for sales?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, if you are a brand, you have a promise, you have a story. Brand is all about promise or story. If you don't have a promise or a story, if you're and you're selling a product, then you really don't have a soul, right? And you're just selling a utility. And in that case, price is the lowest common denomination, right? And what consumers are looking at, primarily millennial generation, what they're looking for product and that has a story, that stands for something, that has a value. And most e-commerce platform doesn't let you tell their brands, tell their stories, tell their values. And I think that's really, really important, that what we're trying to do is give brands the choice to tell their stories, and then consumer can discover those brands and buy that brands. So I think what we're trying to do is highlighting the brand. It's really resonating well with the brands. And then the second thing is our commitment to trust, right? Verishop means verified shop. The internet, over the last 20 years lost their trust. We had misinformation. Now we have misproduct, like fake product. So from fake news to fake product world we're living in. And so consumers, a lot of times they buy product and they get fake product. And so the fact that, we guarantee the product that we're selling is sourced from the brands or trusted places, and that we stand by that has a lot of value, and that resonated well with the consumers, but as well as the brand. A lot of times the brands tell me that they don't want to go to a traditional e-commerce platform because they know their product will show up next to a counterfeit product, and it ruins their brand value. And that's what we're trying to solve.
At the same time, though, with the rise of direct to consumer and just that proliferation, and a lot of these companies having their own e-commerce sites and ways of reaching customers, what's the value proposition that you're actually providing for brands in that category to actually have them list at all on Verishop as opposed to just going their own route?
Yeah. So first of all, brand direct to consumer is not a really new concept in my view. Before internet, there's a lot of the brands, they had their own standalone physical stores, right? All the big brands, they have their own stores, but then they also sold in a mall. They also sold department stores. And the reason they did that, if you are customers who know the brand and you already have an existing relationship, you might want to go to that store directly and buy from them. But a lot of the times consumers want to discover new brand and new product, so they need to go to a platform. They got to go to a mall to discover that new brand and new product. Second thing is, if you are buying a single product, you might just walk down this and go to the store specifically. But a lot of times people want to buy multiple products. And that's why when you go to shopping mall, you don't just necessarily always buy one product. You buy something, you eat, or you buy the second product, and so that's why people come to our platform, right? Because we provide the convenience of, buying 4 or 5 or 6 or 3 or 2, whatever, from one platform and show up at the same time. Third, that's where you can have to remember one phone number, one customer support contact information, and you have to enter your credit card only once.
Interesting. And taking a look too, just at the strategy that you've had around shipping, one of the things I noticed recently is that the company is now offering free 2-day shipping, but had previously been offering 1-day shipping for at least part of last year. What's the long-term view on how Verishop is going to handle shipping in terms of whether it's going to be default free 1-day or 2-day, or might potentially roll out something like Amazon Prime has with a membership program to bring down some of these high costs associated with shipping?
Yeah, so our view is always about giving consumer the choice. Some customers, what we found since launch, some customers care deeply about same-day delivery. Some customers care about 2-day shipping. Some customers totally fine with the ground shipping. So what we stand for is choice. And we're going to have all those choices available to consumers and make sure shopping as frictionless as possible.
When you take a look at the impact that the pandemic has had on Verishop, what would you say is the number one change that the company has had to make, or a pivot in just the overall strategy in order to accommodate some of the consumer behavioral changes that have occurred?
I don't think the consumer behavior changed in a sense, like, I don't think anything changed one way or other. I think it accelerated, right? People were shopping online before, they're just shopping more, and we saw some of the newer customer base, a little bit older demographic who didn't use internet for shopping, now came in. So I think what COVID did is there are some of the underlying trends that has been going on for a long period of time that just accelerated for that. We suddenly, moved 5 years, that I thought the world will be here in 2025. Now we went there in 3 months. I think, the biggest thing, I think, to be honest with you, the biggest learning is for us as an organization, now we became a distributed company, right? Because we all used to go to office, we all had to see each other, and now we became a distributed company. We have 70 or so employees. They're all living in different places, and everything is happening through video conference. So coordination, how can you have a better dialogue, and how can you keep everybody on time, on same plan, and how do you keep the morale up? Those were actually, I thought, was the biggest challenge as a founder and a CEO. So I think that was a great learning experience, that how can we be a distributed workforce and also be very effective and be a one team with a one voice.
As we're now in this transitional phase, as we have some states and cities now reopening, do you foresee Verishop maintaining its current position as this distributed company? Do you see working from home for a majority of the workforce becoming the new norm, or are you eager to potentially go back to the office and face-to-face?
So first of all, our employee safety is the paramount and very important to us. So we will not consider opening office till we feel comfortable that our employees will be safe. But saying that, I think, if you would ask me 2 years ago, I was not a big fan of people working from home. And now I'm much more open to it. I think it can be as effective, as being in office. Sometimes could be even more effective because you're not distracted by everything that's going on in the office. So so I think we're going to be much more distributed, and I think it's also support our employees. Many of our employees, LA real estate rent cost is so high. So by being distributed, it's actually employee friendly that people can live a little bit farther away and have a better life.
Right. I'm sure a lot of companies seem to be in that same position now and just thinking about their own futures. But pivoting a bit just to speak about Verishop's customer acquisition, the way that you've handled marketing, how has that changed, if at all, in the past couple of months? Have you seen this as potentially being a bigger opportunity to reach a larger audience? And if so, have you accelerated spending on marketing or changed some of the channels that you've used to reach customers?
Our customer acquisition actually got really, really efficient. In fact, our return on ad spend improved by more than 70% over the last 6 months. So we're actually spending less money on marketing, meaningfully less money in marketing than we did beginning of the year. But because we're so effective, that's really driving the revenue growth. On top of that, we are seeing that our existing customers, because our NPS is so high, customer satisfaction is very, very high. We are seeing a lot of repeat customers on our platform. That's actually another big advantage for us, being an online shopping mall, that is differentiated than a company that is selling a single product. Because people come to us for multiple products. You might come to us to buy a beauty product, then next time you will come for a dress, or then people are coming for a home product. So because we're selling multi-categories, people have more reasons to come to our platform.
What's been the most effective marketing channel for Verishop so far in terms of ROI and conversion to paid customers?
To be honest, the biggest and most efficient is still remain the word of mouth. Serve your customers best, and your customers are your biggest champion. I read every customer support email that comes to us, and there is nothing like delighting our customers, and that customer is going telling 4 or 5 friends. And when we keep track of our organic traffic growth, organic customer, and people who just type in Verishop has the highest conversion rate. So that has been very, very, and so we really focus on customer-centric company.
Interesting. And I know your sales growth has been very meaningful, has been accelerating, as you said, over the past couple months. But what about individual customers? Do you have a sense of how unique customer growth has shifted over the past several weeks, several months?
Yeah, customer growth also improved very meaningfully. We are seeing a lot of repeat orders, but also our customers' growth rate remained double-digit month-over-month.
Great. And I also want to shift gears a bit because, Imran, I know you've had quite an extensive career before Verishop. You were Chief Strategy Officer at Snap-in, where there as the company was scaling and then went public. What would you say is the biggest learning that you took from that experience and brought now to your new company?
I think building culture is super important, because I think when you grow really fast, you have a lot of people you're onboarding, and they all come from different companies and come from different values. So having everybody, rally behind one cause, a mission, a mission statement is super important. Many companies don't even have a mission statement from day one. We have a mission statement. Our mission is to build the largest online shopping mall in Western world. You have to and have guiding principle. Or as a company, we have 10 guiding principle. And rallying people behind those mission and vision and the guiding principle is super important. Otherwise, you end up with a group of people who has different values and different principle, and that creates a lot of internal pain, and that slows down innovation, and that slows down your growth.
Interesting. And on that point about just your workforce in general and the culture that you've cultivated, what do you actually look for when you're hiring, and what have your hiring trends been given the pandemic, given as we've seen many of these new startups actually have to cut back on their workforce? Is that something that you saw at Verishop?
I think, we continue to evolve our business, and based on the need, we want it to be strategic, when we try to hire people, I think we look for a couple of kinds, right? Number one, people who like to think big and are willing to take risk and also learn from their mistakes. So that's something I really, really care about, primarily at this kind of time of our company, because we need to think about exponential growth. There will be a time that we need to think about incrementally, but right now at our company, we need to think about exponentially. And we always have to think about how to think differently, how to do things differently, because if you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, then we don't need to exist because that need is being served. We really have to think about What's need has not been served. How can we do things differently? How can we be more action-oriented? And being action-oriented is a super big focus of the company. And that's kind of people we're trying to hire, who will think out of the box, who will be very mission-oriented, and who will take actions.
And since you mentioned culture being one of the big takeaways from Snap, do you feel that that company, while you were there, was successful in cultivating a culture where there was this united mission statement, there was this common goal that employees were working for? What was your experience while you were there?
Snap had a very good innovation culture. If you look at during my time, in terms of product innovation that Snap had done, very few companies have ever done that. And the launch of product, the innovation culture that Evan that created is incredible. And I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved in terms of product release and how we really create a new standard, whether we're talking about full screen mobile video ad unit or creating stories, that is now becoming a new mobile format. And that culture is really helped companies grow. Building an innovation culture is really hard. And I'm proud of the innovation culture we built it.
And as you're watching Snap continue to grow now from the outside and seeing, on one hand, this opportunity that social distancing has presented, driving growth and engagement in the user base that we saw in those first quarter results, but at the same time, seeing a bit more pressure on the ad revenue side, just given the pandemic circumstances that we're under now. What do you think is the number one thing Snap should be doing to make sure it's monetizing that growth, continuing to grow in a scalable direction?
Yeah, Snap has a really good team. So I'm sure they are more well qualified to answer that question than me. I've been really focused on running Verishop.
Definitely fair enough. And, something else I want to ask too is just given the social distancing, the opportunities there, as I mentioned, for Snap, but also for e-commerce, did you potentially go back to investors, raise more funds to have just more capital available to be able to deploy during this time? Or what was the strategy on that end?
I believe that you should always run the business for managing growth and profitability. And so when things, and don't try to raise money when you absolutely need to raise money, So I think, raising money or going to investor during this kind of environment show weakness. And we have a balance sheet that can support our growth rate. As we said, we grew 30% in month of April and grew 33% in month of May. So I don't think raising money, this is the right time. So we really want to focus on execution and drive growth because I don't think raising money in this kind of environment show the sign of strength.
And just looking at the strategy right now, what would you say is the number one priority in terms of growing Verishop and bringing it to the next level?
Yeah, I think, again, our mission is to build the largest online shopping mall in Western world. And, if you look at why do you go to shopping mall, you go to shopping mall for entertainment, you go to shopping mall for discovery, and you go to shopping mall for convenience. And I'm really focused on bringing those three value propositions to customers. And we have a lot of work to do to bring entertainment. We have a lot of work to do, bring discovery. And we can be better on convenience. While I'm incredibly proud of our net promoter score, we still have to do better. And that's what we really remain focused on.
What do you think is the number one actionable item or move that you could do to bring convenience to that next level?
I think, so convenience front, I think the next big thing would be how can we build a distribution center closer to our consumer? I think if you look at, if you're East Coast or Central, you get product faster. The second thing I think we can do is really start understanding the demand forecasting so that we can make sure all as consumers have the product that they want. So those are the two things that I think we can do that will immediately improve experience better.
Where are most of your customers actually located right now?
It's across the U.S. So we're only in the United States. So 100% of our customers come from U.S.
But just in terms of geography, are you seeing certain consolidation in East Coast, West Coast, certain metropolitan areas more so than another?
No, it's pretty broad. It's pretty broad. I think one of the interesting things is that, a lot of the cities in the East Coast, outside the East Coast and West Coast don't have access to these brand and products. So we bring those brands and product that they don't have access to with an incredible convenience. So that's a really big value proposition. Because if you're living in New York, you have a lot more access. There's a lot more shops in New York City than you are living in some or other places. So I think that way we democratize that, and bring the product and choices to consumers across America.
Great. And Imran, I do want to draw on another one of your previous experiences as head of global internet investment banking at Credit Suisse. You played a major role in bringing Alibaba public, and of course have just a lot of experience in the public sector, or the public markets for Chinese companies. And just as you're looking at some of the tensions that are going on now between the U.S. and China, particularly around legislation that could delist or even ban some Chinese firms from listing on U.S. exchanges, what is just your take on this as someone who had such an important role for so many of these companies in listing?
Yeah, I think two things. One, I think the banks has to do better job diligencing these companies, just to make sure that the reporting structures or the financial disclosures is accurate. They have to work with the right auditors. And I think, frankly, some listings were not gone through that kind of diligence. I would say that some banks didn't do their homework well, or some lawyers didn't do their homework well. That's unfortunate. And regardless of the tension or not tension, regardless whether it's a Chinese company or a US company or a European company, we need to be very careful that when we bring a company to the public market, we do the right diligence. And as a banker, all the bankers does the right underlying work. So that needs to happen. And then the second thing is in terms of overall, political tension. Look, I think they're both very strong economy, and I think U.S. has rightful reasons to be raising questions about some of the issues. But I think long term, I think both countries have a very important role in the world economy, and we need to build a solution that everybody can live together, and because that ultimately that way will drive prosperity to across the world.
Do you see any Chinese firms specifically, warranting some of the scrutiny that they're receiving now, given these investigations and given the legislation that's now passing or surrounding the potential delisting of these firms?
I left banking 5 years ago, so I didn't really pay attention to it. So I'm not sure I can talk about it. But look, I think from my experience when I was a banker, we did the right diligence, and all the companies that we worked with, we lived, we worked with Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse had a very high standard, and we did our part to be as fiduciary responsible to in terms of our job. But in terms of what happened in the last 5 years or what other banks have done, during that previously, I'm just not privy to it, so probably not make sense for me to speculate.
Fair enough. And looking at Verishop, I know the company is just under a year old now, but is becoming a public company something that you envision for Verishop down the line? And if so, what do you think that timeline would be for that?
It's probably very early to speculate. Look, I think the way I look at public market, it's another fundraising method. So different, and tap into different group of investors. And when you go to investors to raise money, it comes with different expectations. So when, as a company, we're ready for that expectations and that public market investors have, and as when we feel comfortable that we can meet their expectations, I think it'll be definitely worth looking into it. I'm not opposed to being a public company. I, was an officer of a public company, so I think it brings a lot of positive. But today is not the right time.
All right, well, definitely something we'll be watching for going forward. And that's all the time we have for now. Imran Khan, co-founder and CEO of Verishop. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Emily.